This is a very impressive turnout. I think the last time I was here was actually 8 years ago when we were discussing the last parks bond that voters approved, which was the 2016 parks bond. And I think that you guys, this turnout definitely has that beat. So I'm wondering if you guys have started like mimosas and Bloody Marys. But nevertheless, it's a super impressive Saturday morning turnout. And I, again, appreciate you having me. I'm here to talk about the Greenfield Lake Park Master Plan, which was adopted by City Council in February. And this is the same presentation that City Council saw before they adopted the plan. Prior to the adoption, we had a lot of public outreach, but one of our most, I think really the only one of our one-on-one meetings outside of our typical public engagement process was with Cape Fear River Watch. That was with Marissa and Kemp, because you guys are such a key component to this park that your feedback, their feedback meant a lot to us. And I wouldn't have endeavored to take this to City Council and ask them to adopt it or take it to the city managers without Cape Fear River Watch's input. And so with that, I will have to riff.
We're gonna do a song and a dance.
And I haven't given this presentation before. Our consultant gave this presentation. And I actually do have some notes, which is really unusual for me. I tend to just speak off the cuff and what comes to the top of my head, but I don't usually do Saturday morning presentations, so I do have some notes. This project actually began at, as a request from Councilmember Charlie Rivenbark. And for those of you who may not know his background, he's a native Wilmingtonian, born and bred, and he loves Greenfield Lake Park. He has, I mean, he's been there since he was a child. He's seen it through like its flourishing years, its down years, its up years, and he just really wanted to see basically the vegetation kind of managed with best local practices of a vegetation management plan, and kind of clearing out the sight lines to the lake, which he remembered when he was young. So we kind of took that and said, well, yeah, we should do that. There's a lot of invasive species at the park. We should try and do a little bit better at managing that, but what else can we do with the park? And so for me, there were 4 key components. We, again, so wanted to see how we could better manage vegetation. We wanted to make the park as safe and secure as we could. We wanted to do a staffing analysis of the park, and we wanted to plan for future capital investment in the park. So we hired a consultant, McAdams Consultant Landscape Architecture, out of Raleigh. They do work all over the country. And hey guys. Really impressively, Mitchell Silver, who is a former New York City Parks Commissioner and then later Chief Urban Planner for the City of Raleigh, got with McAdams just a couple of years prior to our hiring them as a consultant. He's known nationwide. He does speeches all over the place. And that's great, right? If, you know, his name's, you know, on the report or whatever. He came here, rode around the park on his bike, walked around the park, jogged around the park, like really got into this, and said he was so excited about this. And his name is on this report because he was so excited. Not just because his name is on the company's name, but he was like, this is a gem for this city, and he wanted to be super involved. So we were excited to have him. So I'm just going to go through the presentation. What they did first was due diligence, talking about Mitchell and the folks who work with him, coming and spending a lot of time investing themselves into the park, spending time there, seeing what a normal, regular citizen of Wilmington or a visitor experiences. We had a very robust community engagement campaign that I'll go into a little bit later. And then they developed concepts for improvement for today and for the future. And then with all that, there's a final master plan document. This is a really boring slide for a lot of people who aren't doing this from day to day, but we need a framework, right, that we can justify our future investment in. And so that's kind of what this describes to you. We wanted to tell the story of the park's legacy. It has a huge legacy. It's going to be 100 years old next year. What's going on right now? What can we do to improve what's going on right now? And what can we plan for in the future? And by the way, this can be made available to you. I've sent it to Marissa, so there's a lot going on a lot of these slides. If you want to take a hard copy home, I think Marissa can give it to you. I can also give it to you. Did I just say a busy slide? I think I just said a busy slide. I'm not going to read all this to you, but the point of this is this is the city of Wilmington's oldest park, and goes back to, and we wanted to really honor the history, and we didn't want to ignore the history, going all the way back to the indigenous people who lived in this area. It was at one point a plantation, acknowledging that history, and then through the present day and all the stuff that's happened in between. So as I said, it actually became a city park in 1925. Dr. Samuel Green was the owner at the time, and he gifted the park to the city of Wilmington. A really cool thing was in 1924, the road that you see around the lake was a public works project, part of the federal public works programs nationally at the time. And then who loves Greenfield Amphitheater? Who's been there? Yes. So that has been there since the 1960s. It received a significant upgrade in 2008. Previously, it was just like kind of wide open with some benches. Thankfully, Cape Fear Shakespeare had been doing events there for years annually, but that was really the only thing that could happen there because there just wasn't the infrastructure to make it happen. So our previous parks bond in 2006 set aside money for a renovation that led the way to what you see there now. Just some pictures of the history over the years, although I understand, and I've seen from Kemp, y'all have some probably even more amazing pictures than these. And somebody just came up to me and said, yes. Stand up and tell me the photographer's name again.
Ryan Putnam.
Has some amazing nature photography that we need to get out there. And we have some ideas for that, as you'll see in some upcoming slides. So Greenfield is a lot of things to a lot of people. It's recreational. It is preservation and ecology, and it's history. I'm sure if anybody goes to the park, you've seen these structures before. Do you know actually what these were built for?
I think there was my mom, when she first came in the 80s, I think there was a zoo over there somewhere.
That is right next to a zoo. There, yes.
And a pavilion that had hot dogs.
They did.
Long time ago. Probably.
Zoo, a train, a carousel, all of that. These actually were shelters for people to play chess.
Yes.
And you still see the tables under there. So these are just the boring facts or exciting facts, but we wanted to put this out there for people who, when we gave this presentation to City Council, whenever we present to City Council, we're also presenting to our citizens and anybody else across the country or across the world who's watching our meetings who may not know about this. But Greenfield is 250 acres. Most of it is a lake, 91 acres. We have 7 shelters, obviously the amphitheater, 3 playgrounds, the paddle boats, which are operated by Cape Fear River Watch, tennis courts, which are getting ready to be converted to pickleball courts. Big deal. Skate park, and of course 5 miles of paved trail. So here's what our consultant, who it's always, I mean, sometimes people are like, why are you paying for a study when we know we can all go out and see for ourselves what's going on in our own community? It's actually really important sometimes to get an outsider to come in and look what is happening. We just did that with the Riverwalk. Paid somebody to come, and they stayed actually in Midtown. Didn't want to be staying downtown, didn't want to know anything about the Riverwalk before they got there. They wanted to stay like over in Mayfair, put Riverwalk in their GPS, find out, going to the Riverwalk, where does it take me and what happens there? Kind of the same thing here. That's really valuable information because we all have our own biases as residents here for Wilmington. So that's why we think that's important. So what they observed was well-loved loop. Obviously, we all know that. Very well used. Really was impressed with the nature of the ecology at being kind of a refuge in this middle of the city of Wilmington. A lot of recreation happening there. On the downside, invasive species, aging facilities, and more need for eyes in the park. We can all agree, right? Super important with any project that we do is community engagement. We're just the conduit. We're here to take what we hear from the citizens and try and make the best decisions with our knowledge coupled with your experiences in the park. So we had almost a year ago today, which is crazy to me, an event at the amphitheater where we invited people out to just drop in and tell us what you think of the park and your opinions. And we had about 80 people attend that. We also had an online survey, which was, we got a lot of great feedback on. We didn't get enough, in our opinion, with those two, with the online survey and with the drop-in event. So we made some extra attempts. In particularly, we didn't feel like we were getting a lot of input from the neighborhoods immediately surrounding the park. Black community, Hispanic community, people of lower income. So we went out and made some like deliberate, targeted attempts to get more input from folks in those communities. And those are just some of the ones listed at the bottom. By the way, there's no String Cheese Festival in Wilmington. That's a band that played at the amphitheater. String Cheese Incident, yes. Our consultant didn't know that they misnamed that. But we also went to some of the surrounding housing complexes and the MLK Center to get additional input. Here's what we found. So this slide is showing why do you visit Greenfield Park? Not surprisingly, most of the people come to exercise on the loop or just take in the scenery on the loop. I myself was one of these people a long, long time ago. I lived in Sunset Park. The very first house that I bought was in Sunset Park ages and ages ago. And my husband and I used to ride our bikes over and go around the loop. After that, I would run the loop. I don't know if I can do that anymore. Still try. I think I did it one day when it was like 100 degrees. I thought I was going to die, but all fun. Obviously, the amphitheater, we know how popular that is. Like to point out that number 4 on this is wildlife and bird watching. And I don't think would see that as popular if we didn't have the promotion of the Cape Fear Riverwatch. And I'm not going to get on my soapbox and talk about how important collaborations and partnerships are with our entire park system, which is 744 acres, but I will, because we can't do this all just as a local government. We need everybody helping us to keep our parks strong. This slide shows what are the top 3 areas that should be prioritized for improvements. Restrooms and concessions, the loop, more shelters, more picnic areas, Lions Bridge. I'll speak to a couple of these. Restrooms and concessions. Restrooms are sort of a nightmare for anybody who's ever worked for anyone who manages public restrooms. Number 1, they're only as clean as the last person who used them. And unfortunately, we don't have bathroom attendants who are going in there able to clean up whoever is the last person who used them. Greenfield's restrooms were inoperable, some of them, for a very, very, very long time. Part of that was not the fault of the city. I'm not going to bash CFP way, but there was a line that was broken and we couldn't get it fixed. They're now reopened. Now, whenever we see vandalism in our restrooms, which most commonly occurs at Greenfield, Wade Park, Archie Blue Park, and at the Visitor Center downtown, we're going in and replacing all the fixtures with stainless steel instead of porcelain. Not vandal proof, but much more vandal resistant. So we've done that at 3 of those locations so far, including Greenfield. The concession stand is closed right now, number one, because it's not ADA compliant, so it would take a complete renovation to make them ADA compliant, but also we tried operating that in the 90s. Nobody came. So it's so funny that this is a big request from people because we tried it before, didn't work. Maybe we can try it again in the future. We do, good news, have funding for repair and replacement of a very large section of the trail. We are actually under contract with a contractor who, and that project will be starting later this May. And if, for people who go to the park a lot, you know that Lions Bridge is closed right now. That was a project that was funded in the 2016 bond at the time for repair. We had an analysis done. They said, you've actually got to take the whole thing down. It's not safe. That's why it's closed right now. But the city has money in their capital improvement program for next year and this year for the design and the replacement of that bridge. And we have a few different ideas for design, maybe not necessarily going back with the same bridge. So we will want to hear what you guys think about what you want to see with that bridge. Biggest challenges, not unsurprisingly, perception of safety and lack of maintenance, lack of park supervision. We did hire, for the very first time, a park ranger 2 years ago. He's primarily stationed at Greenfield, although we do send him to do spot checks at other parks where we have violence peaking at those parks, but primarily he's at Greenfield. And just in the first year that he was there, we saw incidences of alcohol use in the park go down by 20%. He primarily, he touches people just to see what they need. And so it's not just that he's there for preventing crime, he's also there to sort of as an ambassador to the park. What do you need? Can I escort you to the parking lot? He's just there to communicate with people. It's been a great program. We're trying to get a second one, so the next time, we're getting ready to adopt the new city budget, so it's a little too late for comment, but next year, if we want to ask for one, you guys want to advocate for another park ranger, we'd love to hear for that. Lack of supervision, obviously we can't be anywhere all the time. This is one of just a few city parks where we actually do have staff there on a daily basis doing maintenance in the park. But even better than that, we have Cape Fear River Watch. They're there doing programs all the time. We have some ideas to kind of further entrench Cape Fear River Watch at the park. When we were building Riverfront Park, Live Oak Bank Pavilion downtown, we were a little bit concerned at what would happen there when there aren't concerts taking place. We wanted it to be a safe, secure park for everybody when there's nothing taking place there. And we've done that so far. It's been super successful. And one of the reasons why I believe is because, like them or love them, Live Nation is there 10 months out of the year. And they have adopted that park like it is their home. They protect it, they defend it, they're there on a daily basis. If something is going on that they don't think is right, they take care of it, or they call us and ask us to take care of it. We need somebody like that, in my opinion. I was saying when we saw, I'm gonna show you all these grand visions that our consultant had for Greenfield, and I was like, should we do this at this park? Because we do have a lot of kind of sketchy stuff that happens at the park. If we build all this stuff, if we invest in this, are we going to be able to take care of it? Like, how could we do that? Well, at Riverfront Park, we have a tenant there that takes care of it in Live Nation. Who could do that at Greenfield? Cape Fear River Watch. So I have some ideas about that I'll show you later. So last slide on the community engagement, or no, 2 more slides. Where are the places that you enjoy and feel most safe? The park core, the entrance, by the playground, by the boats, etc., was the leading contender. But interestingly, on the next slide, was also the least safe. So we need more eyes on the park. So our consultant said, honor your past, embrace the present, transform for the future. So we have some very aspirational, we're going to start slow, see what we can do today, and then fast forward into what is the aspirational for Greenfield. Address critical needs, budget, that's always a thing, and then continue the legacy. So here's a list of things that they said you need to do right now. Of these, the very first one I mentioned a minute ago, we do have funding. We're in a contract right now to repair and replace the trail. Lions Bridge replacement funded, yay, that's happening. We are always looking at adding security cameras. We have them in 5 parks now, MP Park being the latest one that we're installing them through a very generous donation by the Greater Wilmington Tennis Association. So anybody who's feeling generous, we always want to share with people. If you have any extra money, we'd love to have you participate in cameras at Greenfield. We are exploring enhanced janitorial services at the restrooms. And this one, hugely important. We just applied for a grant from the state for $400,000 to help us with, like I said at the very beginning, which was the impetus of this from Councilmember Rivenbark, to start removing aquatic invasive species, terrestrial invasive species. And with that, not only is it good for the water and good for the park, but it's going to open up those sight lines to the lake, which were hugely important. So hopefully we get that grant. We're doing a little bit because we've gotten some new equipment with increases in budget lately, that we're doing little pilot projects. So if you go there, you are going to already see some places where we have improved the sight lines, but it's slow going without this grant. So hopefully we get the grant. And so this is just showing where they're suggesting we invest right now. Again, not surprisingly, sort of the main entrance area, the amphitheater area. And again, sort of what I just went through, but in more detail. They're saying if we get this contract to go ahead and try and do this big clearing, big invasive species removal, the good news is when they assessed our staffing analysis, which remember was one of the 4 key components that I mentioned at the beginning that we wanted to find out, we're pretty good with the staff that we have dedicated there. If we get this big contract, they say, if you hire just one more person, you're going to be able to maintain this and not get back to the situation that we're in now. Phase 2, so this would be in the next 6 to 10 years, continued investment in the loop, but also enhancing the 2 areas, the gateway area and the amphitheater area. Major activation. Again, as a partner, we would look for Cape Fear Riverwatch to help us do that. More programs, more people, more things going on in the park makes it a safer park. And obviously, managing water quality, which is what a lot of you guys are majorly interested in. And I do have our stormwater division does a great job with beginning and implementing and continuing programs in terms of water quality. They have just applied for a grant from UNCW to continue what they're already doing with algae collection. They have it's a good thing I remember all this because I'm not finding my notes. They're getting ready to dredge what's called squash branch and removing some sediment there, which I'm sure all of you guys are aware of that and involved in that. And this, again, just like with the first 5 years, this just shows sort of the areas where the 6 to 10 year improvements would address. And here's just a depiction of kind of what we have now, and when we remove those invasive species, what the park could look like.
Aren't azaleas invasive?
Azaleas are not, no, wisteria, mimosas, that's the kind of thing that we're getting rid of. I think that I might lose my job if I got rid of azaleas, so I'm not advocating for that right here. I know I'm being recorded. I'm not trying to remove the azalea bushes. We'll try and control them. And then, so this is beyond 10 years. So this is the aspirational picture. So again, we've talked about the different zones, the gateway, the amphitheater, and then what they're calling the environmental zone, which I haven't spoken a lot about, which is, you guys can, oh, I do have a pointer here. I don't know how to use it though. That on the, where it used to be the sort of the trails, interior trails that are closed now, they have recommended that we kind of clear that and open that back up, and with security cameras and lighting, hopefully create trails and more connections. So for people who don't want to walk 5 miles around the park, how can we better connect them with other areas of the park by building bridges within the park? So that's a major deal. So these last few slides sort of brings it all into focus, what they recommended that we do. And going back to the beginning, as I mentioned, pickleball. So the 2 tennis courts are going to be transformed exclusively into pickleball courts. That may not be, you guys don't, I don't know how into athletics you guys are, you're more into nature, but that crosses over. Maybe some of you guys are big pickleball people. That's going to be a total of 6 dedicated pickleball courts. I've already mentioned the other things that we're doing right now, Lions Bridge, the trail, etc. Here is going over to the other side where the amphitheater is. Some of these are already taking place. The Fragrance Garden, which is right next to the amphitheater. We've recently demolished the old pavilion or gazebo, and we've built a boardwalk observation deck onto the river. We're replacing some old brick pavers with new pavers, installing new lighting. And then with the amphitheater, Live Nation is getting ready to embark on a project where if you're at the amphitheater and you are on the other side of the restrooms, which is kind of in like a dead area, they are going to push the fence out and kind of invite in a big live oak tree that's existing and kind of make it like a beer garden lounge area with string lights and furniture and another concession stand. But importantly, they've said, we don't want it to be like the red and black Live Nation, you know, color logo, blah, blah, blah. They said that it's important for them that Greenfield Lake Amphitheater look like Greenfield Lake Amphitheater. So they're going to embrace that and improve that. So that should be done by the end of the summer. So this is the kind of node that I was talking about that gets sort of unused now on the east side of the park, which was the old nature trail that's closed now. So they are recommending that we add parking there. That was something that we heard, that there's not enough parking. And they mentioned like an events center, nature center. I don't know how realistic that is, but what we would like to do is make new trails, boardwalk trails, and make those connections to like over to the amphitheater, again with improved with lighting and security cameras. And so these are just some depictions of what McAdams thought the park could look like with these improvements. Back to the boring slide at the beginning, but this is sort of our blueprint that we will use as staff to try to accomplish all of these goals. That's it. Yes. Thank you. Thanks. Yes, ma'am.